I am so sorry I don't speak Spanish. And you know why? I have no idea what he said. No idea. He could have said nice things. He could have said bad things. I have no idea. Anyway, the next thing is, I want you guys to know that I've only had 45 minutes sleep since today and last night. But even though I've only had 45 minutes sleep since today, last night and this morning, I realized as I was in the plane this morning coming down that I'm happy to be alive. And the reason why I say I'm happy to be alive is because yesterday, just before we left Toronto, where I'm from, I noticed that we're spending a bit too much time on the tarmac. You know, once you push back, you're supposed to leave. I dozed a bit because I was tired. I found out we're still on the tarmac. And the captain said, ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing problems with engine number 2. And we need to do some repairs. At which time I woke up and I prayed that they would not be able to fix engine number 2. Because can you imagine flying on an aircraft when you know that there was something wrong with it? The whole flight, you're wondering, what if the mechanic didn't fix it properly? Anyways, luckily they gave us a different plane for today. During the course of this week, or this few days, you are going to hear drug treatment courts described. If you did not do so already, because I didn't have a chance to look at the agenda again, Dr. Cooper may have told you about the key components of what a drug treatment court is. Various speakers are going to come and speak to you about treatment and various aspects of drug treatment court. I have decided to do something a bit different. I shall leave all those fundamentals to those speakers. And I will proceed to tell you why I thought drug treatment court was the worst possible idea on the planet, that it was a total waste of time, and how I suddenly became a convert. And why I think the drug treatment courts are important, not as the only solution, and I think it's important that we stress that. Nobody has found a magic pill to deal with addiction. It's a tough business. Drug treatment courts are important as one of many options that you can put together to help drug addicts, right? So it's like when you go and see a doctor and you've got a problem. If you've got problems with your lungs, he gives you medication to deal with the infection in your lungs. He doesn't give you medication to deal with infection in your liver. So drug treatment court is another tool that we use because there are different types of addicts who have different reasons for being addicts, and so different approaches will work for them. And so I'll talk to you about the kinds of addicts that we in Canada have found benefit most from drug treatment courts. But before that, I have to let you know a little bit about myself to give you an idea of how a non-believer I was. So how do I get this thing to move? I'm clicking the forward. Nothing happening? Oh, all right. Okay. You see, I was born in Ghana, Africa. And the only reason why I think my parents sent me to Canada was, no, I don't want it to keep going. How do I stop it from keep going? I should go back? Oh, I'm working here, right? Yeah. All right. This one too? Should I try this? Here. Okay, whatever. I do not know what I'm doing. So, okay, this is where I am. Okay, so this is the one I should focus on. All right. So I came to Canada to try and, as an immigrant, to try and, better my life. So I came in, I struggled, went to school, became a lawyer, and got one of the plummiest jobs around. I was a federal prosecutor, and I got very good at being a federal prosecutor. So I started to get big cases. If you're a lawyer, you like big cases. So the cases that involve the big cartels, and that kind of stuff, I used to do them. Looking back, I feel like I was a bit of an idiot. I don't know why I was not worried about my safety, but I liked it. I used to get security. I used to do those big cases and so on and so on and so forth. I did that for 5 years. And then they said, you've gotten very good at this. It is time to give you a promotion. So we are going to have you go to a special courthouse and supervise some 10 or 12 prosecutors. But going to that place is supposed to teach you administrative and managerial skills. So in that place, they deal with people who commit low-level offenses. And the problem we have in that place is we don't have enough people to do the job. So we want you to go and develop some mechanisms to go in and make sure we can do the job well. So you can imagine, ambitious guy, ready to go. I go down, and I find out that there are a certain group of people who, no matter how much jail time we give them, they keep coming back. Anybody watch Rocky? I know it's in English, but okay, I don't know whether you watch Rocky in Spanish. I don't know. Rocky Balboa. So no matter how much you beat Rocky, you're always coming back, right? I don't know how he does it, only in the movies. Well, we found out these addicts, you catch them, you put them in jail, you catch them from a particular street in front of the OAS, you put them in jail, they do their time, they come back, they're right back in the place. It doesn't matter what you do, they're right coming back to the place. And and in those days, I had bigger problems. I had a big case. I had more, what I thought were more serious cases. I didn't have time for these guys. But we needed prosecutors to prosecute them. So I was trying to find ways. So I decided, okay, well, I'll give them deals so that they just sort of go away. I'm a man who is stressed out, trying to survive, not having enough people to do the work. Then comes some judge called Paul Bentley. He tells me, now is no big deal, but back then in Canada, huge. He tells me that he wants to do something called drug treatment court. Now, I'm a lawyer. I didn't go and become a social worker. The moment you tell me drug treatment, I said, what? And to make matters worse, I'm a prosecutor. I'm supposed to be tough on crime. What do you mean drug treatment? No. I said, no way. You have to understand. I was a guy who was moving up, ambitious man. I'm not going to go and do this social work thing. No way. So I went to see my boss. I'm like, look, listen, there's this crazy man called Judge Bentley. He wants to do something called drug treatment court. I think you tell him, no. He says, no. Don't tell him. I'm like, why? He says, no. Don't tell him no. Just do whatever he says. But I'm like, but this is going to destroy my career. She says, no. I found out later that my boss wanted to become a judge herself. So she didn't want to annoy Paul Bentley. Now, my boss was a micromanager, somebody who likes to be in control of everything. So the next day she called me and she says, Kofi, I'm very impressed with you. And the moment she says, I'm very impressed with you, you should worry. She says, I'm very impressed with you. You just take control. Don't tell me what's happening. You are completely in charge. The moment she says, don't tell me what's happening, you're completely in charge, then you know that she knows that this was going to fail. Right? So that when it goes down, you are alone. Because it was supposed to be the worst possible, worst idea. So I went home, I said my wife, dear, my career is over. It is finished. Now they want me to do something. This is not working for me now. Something called drug treatment court. They've never done it anywhere in Canada. I hear there's some stuff in the United States that do this. They bring treatment into the courtroom. It's over. I better find something else to do. And my father-in-law said to me, he says, look, it is new. Try and make it work. Now, I want to tell you, I did not believe it. The only reason why I decided to make it work was I was like, okay, fine. If you people think this is going to fail, it was all about me. I'm going to make sure that it doesn't fail to show you people. It had nothing to do with the process. And the judge, well, he and I became friends. Why? Because his friends, his colleagues were also telling him that he was crazy. So we had to find a way to survive. So once we decided to actually work on this stuff, then I started to pay attention to drug addicts. These are the kind of people we're getting in Toronto. All right? In Toronto, in Canada, our sentencing is low. I'm a judge now, I can tell you. Our sentencing is not high. If you look at the Canadian sentencing laws and compare them to Mexico or North or US, you laugh. I'm a judge. I impose them all the time, right? Okay, you know, so we don't get people who are charged with, people who are just low-level addicts. We get the hardcore ones, you know, the ones that nobody can deal with, the ones that keep going to jail all the time. Those are the people that we get, all right? So this is a typical addict. Look at him, right? All out. Okay, you know, anyways. So as I began to pay attention, I began to realize that the problem is, the reason why we kept seeing these people over and over again is we don't treat the problem. The main problem is the addiction itself. We don't treat it. So we send them to jail, don't treat their addiction. They spend time in jail. In Canada, actually, you can get a few drugs in jail also, right? They come out, they go right back to the same place and do the same thing. Police officers are frustrated, like, you know, they keep coming back, committing crimes. Storekeepers are frustrated. People are being victimized and stuff. Now, you saw that guy looking so high. What is another thing that will suffer? If he's got family destroyed, and the way in which he's probably using his drugs, health care problems, right? He will get some kind of diseases, illnesses, and that kind of stuff. And in Canada, one of the interesting things is that because we've got a publicly funded health care, it's costing the taxpayers money, right? Plus, because he keeps coming back all the time, what happens? You know, police officers, jail, all these resources, judges, over and over again. So it became clear that something had to be done. Obviously, these things always end up in something sad, right? I mean, they keep going until they finally end up dying. So in drug treatment courts, one of the things that we try to do is find out why. Why is this person in this situation? Yes, they're using the drug addiction is sure. But we try and go beyond that, right? We try and find out why the problem is happening. Now, I give an example of what drug treatment court is all about. Let's assume that you are walking down the street and you see a guy with a baseball bat. He seems to be from another planet. He's speaking different languages to himself. And he's taking a baseball bat and attacking anybody who shows up. He's marked his territory with his baseball bat like this, right? You call the police. The police come and arrest him. Now in Canada, what the police do, they'll arrest him, they'll prepare a report. The report will go to the prosecutor. I'm giving the Canadian system, maybe different somewhere else. Go to the prosecutor. The prosecutor will look at it and begin prosecution, right? And the person will get a defense lawyer. That is the law side. The law side sees the person with a baseball bat attacking. Now that person, let's say, is high on heroin. He goes into the police station and he goes to withdraw, but he comes down, he's no longer high. So then a social worker or drug counselor comes to see him. And he says things like, you know, I lost my job, or I went through some trauma, I was abused as a boy, or something horrible happened to them. Or it may be like, he may say something like, you know, I was a normal person, just like you, living a job 9 to 5. One day I got into an accident. I hurt my spine or something, and the doctor gave me medication, and I got hooked. There may be all kinds of reasons. But by this time, that person is down, right? He's more normal. That person is like a coin. Two different sides. When you take a coin that you do not know and look at the coin and look at the top of the coin, you cannot see the bottom. And when you flip it, you see the top, you don't see the bottom. It's only when you find a way to make sure that you can see both sides that it works out. Right? So what happens? The law enforcement just focuses on just giving him more jail time, which of course doesn't work because you don't address the treatment side of it. The treatment person focuses on just the addiction part of it, but does not take into account that there was a criminal component of it. So what drug treatment court does is it brings them both together, right? Reason why when we go and see a doctor, reason why the doctor runs all kinds of tests on us is because they are trying to get the picture. And by getting the picture of what is wrong with us, they are able to prescribe a solution. So what drug treatment courts do is that they bring both sides of the coin together. Can you imagine the first conversation between a law enforcement person and a treatment person? Right? Has anybody been to divorce court? Oh, okay, you've not been divorced. Well, I'm a federal judge. I do divorce. And it's amazing to see the husband and wife who used to love each other, hate each other. Oh, God. Listen. If you've got a court in your house, in your country, and you are bored one day, just go for entertainment. It's not, I always tell people that I don't need security in the court when I'm doing criminal cases. No. I need security in the court when I'm doing family law with husband and the people who used to be married and love each other. You know? So, and when they are talking to you, you don't hear what they are saying. They are talking at each other. They're not listening to each other. Right? So, what drug treatment court does is that it brings the criminal justice system and the health system together and gets them to talk. And when they start to talk, they can come up with a better solution for the person that addresses the criminal and the thing that is causing the criminal. Right? And that's why we say it's holistic. I should keep looking at I keep looking at this and I do not know what that is. So I should look like this. I'm trying to impress you that I know that. I have no idea. All right. So you see, it's a strong partnership. Well. Okay. So you don't have to worry about this. This just tells you that at some point, what do you call it? We started drug treatment courts in Canada. The judge and I, we started the first one in Canada. Now, why should you care about drug treatment courts? I mean, because at the end of the day, it's like, show me the money. You know, my son, Nicholas, is 12. And he was watching NBA basketball. And I don't know if you watch basketball, but there's this guy called LeBron James. I hear he's good. So LeBron James did some move. And my son, 12, he says, Dad, that was an N1. I'm like, N what? N1. I'm like, okay, whatever. He says, I can do better. I'm like, really? I can, oh man, no problem. I can do now. My son is here, this side, right? I said, no problem. So he says, I said, well, if you can do better, show me. He said, no problem. So I went out. We have a basketball court. He said, well, Dad, the only problem is I need you to bring the basketball thing down a little bit. I said, fine, no problem. You know? And then he went and did some moves. He danced. He said, yeah, man, you know, I can do it. Actually, he can do it. He showed me that he could do it. Now, I don't think he can do it as well as LeBron, but he got it done. Right? And so it's okay for me to come and say, God, man, drug treatment court is fabulous. It's a fantastic idea. Why should you bother to believe me? You know what I mean? I mean, I can tell you stories. So who cares about stories? And in fact, that's why during the course of today, you're going to hear somebody talk. I don't know whether it's today or yesterday. I'm sorry. I've missed. But it's happening this week. Somebody's going to talk about evaluation. If your program is so good, show me why it is good. Right? And for me, the reason why I've now become very passionate about drug treatment court. Now, I want to be very careful. when I say I am passionate about drug treatment court, I do not say that drug treatment court is the solution to all the world's problems. Please. If I say that, please chase me here, out of here with a baseball bat. I am saying that drug treatment court can work for a certain group of people. And in Canada, we found them that it worked for us. Every country will be different, but for us, because of the way our sentencing system works, it works for the high-risk, hard-to-treat people. Those are the people it works for. Anyways, so why is this great? Here are some results. Okay. Well, you know, clearly, I do not know why I put this there. I guess I wanted to show you their faces, okay? Before I go to the results, you know, when you see people go from here to here, of course it's a result, right? When this kind of person, if you met them on the street, would you think that he can ever turn their life around? You figure they're toast. When you do a program and you see them go from here to here, you're like, ah, maybe we are into something, right? I hope I don't have too more of this. What am I saying here? So, yeah, this is what I'm saying. It saves money. Now, in Canada now, that one program that we started in Toronto has now become a national program. It's part of our criminal code. Now, in reality, how do we get our government to do that? We tried by saying, yeah, it's a good idea. You know, it helps drug addicts. It helps people save, change. It helps families reconnect and so on and so on and so forth, that kind of stuff. And they kept saying, that is nice. That is nice. Show me the money. So we did some research, and we found that there was one particular city, the city of Ottawa, that was able to demonstrate that by putting their drug treatment court people through the system in their city, they were able to save various systems about $12 million. Now, per annum. Now you're like, what are you talking about? Well, think of the cost. Where did the cost come from? Let's start from basic principles. A person is high all the time, right? He cannot become a productive member of society. That is a cost. And by not being a productive member of society, you're talking about the economic cost, which is he cannot generate capital and contribute, become a taxpayer. There's also a social cost, right? Family breakdown, even if it's a kid, dysfunctional families, there's a social cost to that. There's also the cost to taxpayers, right? Yeah, so we arrest them and lock them up. When we arrest them and lock them up, who is paying for the arrest, prosecution, and the lockup? You are. It's a cost to the system. Healthcare costs, right? Now, there are also some costs that relates to other economic costs. These guys, of course, some of them may sell drugs here, but some of them are what? Victimizing people, breaking into pharmacies to get drugs, stealing stuff from merchants. So there's a property cost. There's also the cost of intangibility, right? Safety. There is something special, very special, about the fact that in Canada we can say that there are certain one or two neighborhoods that we know that had a high concentration of drug addicts. And because those neighborhoods apply the drug treatment court in addition to other interventions, and I stress that, you know, now people can actually walk down the street and not feel harassed that someone's going to pull their purse. That is priceless, right? You know, those are some real costs. So we found that when it's done properly. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my theme is going to be when it's done properly. Believe me, the reason why the OAS does all of these courses and that kind of stuff is not just simply to tell people about drug treatment courts, but it's also to tell people ways to do it properly. Now, what I mean by ways to do it properly, please don't get me wrong. I am not saying one shoe fits all. Let me give you an example. This may not be a good example, but we have a rule in society, right? That everybody, when they are leaving their house, should wear clothes. They should be decent clothes. Like, for example, when we are coming here, we say you should wear business casual. We don't tell you what to wear. But we know that you have to wear certain clothes. And for men, we know that they will have a shirt, trousers, maybe a jacket. We don't tell them what color it should be. That is the same way what the drug treatment court principles are. And you will hear Dr. Cooper, Antonio, are you somewhere? Antonio has left because he heard me talk about this so many times. But I think Dr. Cooper did this or is about to do it. I'm not sure. Has she done it yesterday? Okay, so Dr. Cooper gave you what they call 10 key components. They are principles that you try to follow, but you can adapt them to your own situation. For example, in Canada, we have about 16 drug treatment courts. They're not all the same, but there's one thing. They all have adopted, they all follow the key principles, but they follow it in different ways, right? You know? Anyways, and there are some courts that don't follow those principles, and do you know what happens? They make the drug addicts worse. It's amazing. They actually make them worse. So it's not all about setting it up. It's also about following certain, it's like a car. You got to maintain it, you got to put oil in it, you got to put gas in it. Otherwise, it'll run out. It's the same thing. Any system has that. Anyways, so it saves money. And in the US, they've done some statistics that says for every $1 that they spent, you know, in a drug treatment court that is working well, taxpayers can recoup something like $336. You know, and then when you add in, that is within the justice system, right? So when you add in what I talked about, the healthcare and all those things, you know what I mean? Then even the figure becomes more. So this is why, one of the reasons why, okay? Then one of the things we also found is that drug treatment cost saves lives. You saw those people, their faces? You know, when they get to the point where they are now productive members of society, they can reconnect. Do you know one of the things that gets me? Right now I'm a federal court judge, so I don't sit in drug treatment court, really. So the drug treatment court right now is now a hobby for me. It's like I'm responsible for trying to set up the National Canadian Drug Treatment Court program, but it's a volunteer staff. And I do it in addition to the other work I do. Why? Because ladies and gentlemen, you know, you'll be amazed how your life is transformed. No matter what your beliefs are, believe me, I was a hardcore guy against this. When you see somebody go who is totally high, hey, what time is it? Oh God, I'm running out of time. Somebody who is high, lost, and you see them change their lives, and you see them meet their child for the first time. Or when you see a woman who has had so many children who have been born infected with drugs, and you watch her have her first clean baby, and you watch her be a mother. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is the redemption of the human spirit. And that's the reason why anybody, even the people who are totally against it, once they get in there and they see the results, they get hooked. You know, people reconnecting. 50% we found in Canada reconnect with their families. 75 are able to move on to education and employment activities. Now, I want to stress, Canada is very different. I'm not saying, maybe Canada is not different at all. I'm just saying Canada is very different. I do not know why I said that, because I assume every country is supposed to be different, but who knows? You got to know, these are impressive because we are dealing with hardcore. We're not dealing with the people who are just sort of doing this and are able to maintain employment, because, you know, in Canada, you get a slap on the wrist. So why would they want to do this? These are impressive because these are the people who are going hard. These are people you see on the streets, homeless, and they are turning their lives around. And that is why these figures are impressive. All right, so obviously I'm saying that it reduces drug use. I'm going to keep moving a bit. You know, I'm going to move a bit faster now. And okay, before I do denial for a second. Oh, geez, man. Yeah, a number of them going. Anyways, so in general terms, we found that they work for people who are, high risk. We tend to go in Canada for low-level offenders with a bit of violence, but not too much. Low-level offenders, high risk. People who commit offenses primarily because they want to support their habit. One of the things that we found is that the best time to begin what we call the drug treatment court process is when people have experienced trauma, right? When you want to lose weight, your motivation gets very high after you've had a heart attack, right? You've gone through trauma. Doctor is like, hey, you better get yourself in shape. So we find that we try and make sure that we identify people who are eligible early. Usually you find that when people are arrested or charged with an offense, they are ready to change their lives. That is the trauma. They are ready to go for it. One of the things that we realized about drug addicts is that they are always in denial, right? So this guy, this guy is saying, look, this guy has promised his wife or somebody, I am going to stop drinking. I'm only going to drink 1 cup a day. So what does he do? He just creates a bigger cup. That is his 1 cup. So he's drinking the same amount, but he's keeping his promise, right? So we found that drug addicts are the same way. They are in denial. So the process that we set up is a process that allows us to move very quickly with our program, very quickly after the arrest, right? When they are going through trauma, we try and get that process in play. And that's when they say, help me. I need help, right? They are ready for some help. And what we do is, what drug treatment courts do is, they try and find out why. Why? Because. Why is this happening? You know, is it because the person's got medical issues? Is it psychiatric issues? Are they worried? Is it because they've gone through some loss of employment or finance stuff, so they feel like, you know, they've lost their self-worth? Has something happening in their family or social status that is causing them to do this? Now, you know, as you can see from the picture, I'll go to Spanish so as if I know what I'm doing. There are so many different causes, right? And so when there are so many different causes of a problem, you need a number of different actors, right? And that is the strength of the drug treatment court process. And what it means is that it brings the people together because you do a comprehensive assessment. So even though you are dealing with the addiction, you know, you may refer them to somebody to help them with mental health issues if they have that. Somebody to help them with housing, right? Because if I'm a drug addict and I'm living in a certain place where all my buddies are smoking, you're not going to send me right back there. It's going to be counterproductive. You know, you may help them with family counseling. Whatever they need, you try and create a situation whereby you do comprehensive, provide comprehensive resources. Now, before you have a headache, say, oh my God, this guy lives in utopia. He's thinking we are going to set up a center and have all these people under one roof. We can't afford that, right? In reality, that's the case. Many programs can't have everybody in one roof. So what many programs do is, and that is the reason why you say you need to have partners, right? You set up your program, maybe you have a core addiction treatment, but you have community partners that can help you address those other issues as they become necessary. So it's a holistic type of scenario. You know, so this is just a list, just an example. You think of your system, right? And remember the example of I gave you of the guy with the baseball bat, his legal stuff and his health stuff, right? And think about the people who in your system have to be together to start to communicate. It's amazing what happens once you get people together and they start talking together. You develop a superior product. Another thing also that is very interesting is that you start to catch the addicts when they lie, right? There was a case whereby there was a guy, his name was Ezra, very, very handsome guy. He can talk. He should have run to be president or a politician. I mean, he was just fabulous. So he was supposed to attend some appointments. In the regular court system in Canada, I can only speak for the Canada system, if I'm a judge and somebody comes and I want to put them on a treatment program, I'll put them on probation. I'll sentence them. I'll say, I'll give you 1 year in jail, When you finish the 1 year in jail, you're supposed to go for treatment as part of your probation. And because I know that, what do you call it? You have addiction, I'm going to send you to go have addiction treatment, right? For most hardcore people, what happens is this Ezad guy, this is what he was doing. Ezad will call his treatment provider and say, you know, Mary, you know, I know we have an appointment at 10:30 today, you know, and I was going to come. But my probation officer said to me, I have to be in probation at 10:30 a.m. So you know how the courts are. I have no choice. I got to go to probation. Mary said, okay, fine, we'll reschedule. Then Ezad will call probation and say, probation, you know how you always tell me I need treatment? I need to be at a treatment place for 10:30 a.m. You know, and you know how it is. It's important. So probation person will say, yes, sure, go and do treatment. Right? And under the normal system, because of confidentiality issues between the two, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So what's happening? Ezad is just playing both games and going down and down in his addiction. In drug treatment, they start to talk. Ezad was very shocked to find out one day when he showed up in court that the treatment and the probation had been talking, and the judge knew everything. He was in total shock. As he started to tell his story, and the judge said, yeah, I know that, but you said this, you said this, you just see his mouth drop. He was shocked. Why? Because he'd been a veteran of the justice system. He'd gone through it many times, and he knows that they never talk. So what is this whole new thing called drug treatment court? Right? So it's one of the ways of also ensuring that you keep people together. So this is an example of the people that need to be together to help. You can see that it brings the justice and court systems, the court systems and treatment together. So, as a judge, I get very, very happy. Right? Why am I very, very happy? I finally have help. I have help. Thank you. I do not know how it is in your system, but in our system, we have what we call the adversarial system. And because we have the adversarial system, what happens is that when Ezad shows up before me as a judge, his defense lawyer is supposed to make sure that I give Ezad the lowest sentence possible. The prosecutor does his best to make sure I give him the highest sentence possible. So that way I'm never going to get the whole story. But when I have the two of them working together, I'm a very happy guy. Right? Because finally we can do something that will truly address the root causes of the problem. And that's the reason why so many people are very, very excited about drug treatment courts, because the left and the right are finally talking. The judge, as a judge, I tell you, man, it's fabulous. It's a fabulous experience. I'm not going to bore you. I'm going to skip a lot of this stuff and summarize it very quickly. Let's go. You know, the drug treatment court process, just Dr. Cooper talked about the 10 key components. How you're going to adjust it will depend on your system. So you look at your system and decide how best to do it. I can give you the Canadian system. You can get the Canadian system and so on and so forth. There is no rule that says you have to follow exactly the way it is. Right? You know, you have to adapt it to fit your system. You know, and that's why I didn't bother, because you may have different systems. In our systems in general, people are arrested. The Crown will screen them. The Crown, the prosecutor, will screen them to see whether or not they fit what we call the legal eligibility. That is the right offense. The treatment provider will do a very comprehensive assessment to see what the person needs. The core team will get together, and I'll show you about the team in a second. We'll get together and discuss what's happening with the various, with the person, and come up with a plan for that person. And the plan will involve a treatment plan. It will involve them coming to court on a regular basis before a judge. And at the end of it, you know, usually about 9 to 12 months and stuff, you work them towards, in Canada we will sort of work them towards getting clean of drugs. We try and help them get a job, employment, and those, retrain and those type of things, you know. And once those things are in place, they don't go to jail. But we try and make them a productive member of society. Now I'm going to try and go a bit fast because I have to wrap up soon. I like this cartoon. And the reason why it is that you see there's a dog here, right? There's a dog in there. And this is what drug treatment is about. So the doctor comes and he says, you know, we do a holistic approach. And that means that we don't only treat, what do you call it? We don't only treat, we are not only going to treat your symptoms, but also treat your dog, right? And clearly, if a dog is in there with you, there has to be some connection, right? We don't know why he's there or she's there, but we clearly have to address that to see what the issues are. And it goes to show the holistic nature of drug treatment courts. I'm going to, Robin is going to talk to you or somebody else. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to stress, you notice I keep saying this, holistic, because it is the whole bottom line of drug treatment courts, right? The whole case management, getting different, connecting the dots. You know, whenever Antonio comes into the room, it means that it's time for me to stop. One of the important things about drug treatment court is also the one-on-one, what do you call it, one-on-one thing with the judge, right? You know, and what is nice is now the judge has information, and they can have a discussion. How many people have visited a drug treatment court? Okay, if you haven't seen one, you should go and see one. The way it's totally different from what you expect. It's totally different from what you expect. Because the judge has information, it's not like any court you've ever seen, right? And that one-on-one interaction is very important. Okay, let's see. Drug treatment courts have random urine screens. They use random urine screens a lot, and I'm not going to talk too much about that because I'm sure Dr. Cooper talked about that. But what is key is, because there's a therapeutic component to it, the way in which you use it is interesting. What else do I have here? Now, let me get through all the stuff. You know, in Canada, this is the Canadian model. I'm not going to. In Canada, we have this theory. If a person can suddenly quit using drugs all of a sudden, then he doesn't need the drug treatment court. We believe that if a person is a true addict, they're going to have a hard time quitting all of a spot. That's what we believe. We believe that if a person is a drug dealer, of course, he's not an addict, so when he comes, yes, Your Honor, he can quit right away. So in the beginning in Canada, we focus more on getting them to be honest about their drug use, and we focus more on getting them to comply with appointments. What is one of the main characteristics of a person who is a drug addict is that they can't do anything. They're always high, right? So we start by working on those behaviors and slowly work them towards, over time, to total abstinence. And that's the reason why we say that we use a harm reduction approach in Canada. And we use the carrot, sanctions and carrots, right? Sanctions, incentives, and carrots. We reward behaviors and also try to do things to try and create some consequences to encourage behavior. What is interesting about this is that all of this is therapeutically based. So let me give you an example. For example, I had a kid who was always going to jail all the time, you know? And so he did something. And the point is that, what's the point of sending him to jail? He likes going to jail. Because when he goes to jail, he actually, you know, feels at home. So after talking to the therapist, we say, okay, we say, look, I'm going to send you to jail for a long time, but before I do that, I hear that you want to work in a fire, you like fire trucks. Okay, I'm going to send you to the fire hall, and you're going to do a whole bunch of volunteer work. You're going to work. You're going to do all kinds of stuff there. You're going to do it for 1 week. Now, maybe to you and to me, it's like, oh, that is nothing, you know. But because we are speaking to the therapist, we know that that is important to that kid. To you, to me, it's like, oh, nothing. But to him, it's a big deal. He came back a changed person, right? So that became his sanction, but it was done in a very smart way because you have the therapeutic. And there are some people who jail is what you got to do. And I remember there was another guy too who hated writing essays. He would rather go to jail. And I knew that from a therapist. What would we do? Say, okay, you know, why don't you write me a one paragraph? It's like, oh my God, oh Lord, you wanna please send me to just. I said, no, I want a paragraph. I want you paragraph to let me know what you've learned so far. So these sanctions and incentives exist, but they are tailored towards the person. Okay, Antonio, my time is up, right? 5 more minutes. Okay, you know something? I'm going to stop here for a second. You know, I've got more to talk about. 5 minutes. You know, I want to talk to you about something else. You know, in the beginning, I told you about the fact that not all drug treatment courts are created equal. That it's very important for drug treatment courts to follow the 10 key components of drug treatment courts. And it's important that those 10 key components be adjusted to your own specific environment. Otherwise, and in fact, there's been some research that has shown that drug treatment courts that followed those components and engaged in ongoing training were 5 times more effective than those that did not. So what we've done is that we believe that every country on the planet has something useful to share on the issue of drug addiction. We also believe that if you decide to apply the drug treatment court model in your countries, there will be something that you will develop that we around the world can learn from. So if you go through the materials, I don't have, I can't do that now, but I do not know where it is. If you go to the materials, you will see that we formed something called the International Association of Drug Treatment Courts, of which I chair. And it's made up of, it's like the United Nations of Drug Treatment Courts. And if you go to the materials, you see there, you see a website for it. And what that organization does is that we help people around the world with drug treatment court issues. But we help them in terms of, like, we are like a broker, right? So for example, if you want to set up a drug treatment court in your country, or if you've got a problem or something, and you contact us, and the information is on the website, because we have such a global network, we'll figure out where to go. So for example, we may say, oh, okay, we'll send you to Antonio in the OAS. He may have some information. Or we may say, oh, Julius Lang in CCI may have something. Or Caroline Cooper. Or we may say West Huddleston and NADCP. You know, we will tend to do that. So because we have countries from all over the world who are part of the drug treatment court, global of the International Drug Treatment Court, we're able to do that. The next thing, too, is that we believe that every country has a story to tell. And so what we do is that we've created a network where every year we send out a newsletter. And the newsletter has the articles from different countries, what they are doing. And we feel that we can share from different countries. We also do a practitioner, training series. And we are trying to do that in both English and Spanish, where we give people from different parts of the world a chance to share their expertise, because we can all learn from each other. And so I'll urge you, I'm making a push clearly, I'll urge you to join. If you go to the materials, you see that. I'll urge you to join. It's the International Association of Drug Treatment Courts, and it's free. Just join our network, and so on and so forth. Now, you know, ladies and gentlemen, my time is really up. The boss has arrived. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, juez Coffee Barnes. Un placer. Thank you. La siguiente sesión, tenemos una de las ponentes del siguiente panel que ahora todavía está volando, debe estar aterrizando en los próximos 15 minutos. Había un retraso en Toronto, pero va a intervenir más tarde. Sin embargo, por suerte, tenemos aquí el lujo de tener al siguiente presentador. Enseguida subirá al stage. Quiero decirles que una de los lujos mayores que tenemos en la OEA en este proyecto con todos ustedes es tener el regalo de poder trabajar con muchísimas instituciones, ¿no? Y con muchísimas organizaciones. Aquí hay muchas que están representadas. El juez Coffee Barnes presentaba también a IETC, también la CDTC de Canadá. También tenemos al Centro para la Innovación de la Justicia, CCI, el Center for Co-Innovation, Julius Lang está allá al fondo. Tenemos NADCP, que es nuestro socio estratégico en este evento en particular para organizar muchas de las visitas que vamos a tener el martes, y mañana verán un poco toda la dimensión de los 4.000 personas que se reúnen para la NADCP. Y una de las personas que trabaja además como uno de los expertos en esa asociación, la Asociación Nacional para Tribunales de Tratamiento de Drogas de Estados Unidos, es el siguiente ponente. Además de ser miembro de la asociación, muy activo además, es el director de Tratamiento para la Agencia de Servicios de Prejuicio para el Distrito de Columbia, en Washington, D.C., y está considerado uno de los mejores expertos en esta materia en todo Estados Unidos. Tenerlo aquí es un lujo. Lo hemos conocido en otras visitas que hemos tenido aquí a la Corte de Washington, D.C., y la verdad es que, es un placer. Dr. Terence Walton, if you're ready, we are ready.
I'm ready.
There you go.
Yep. All right. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I've been looking forward to this for some time. It's my first opportunity to address this group. I am honored to be here because this is what I do. There are two big reasons why I am on earth. The first reason is to keep my wife smiling and happy. That is job one. And once that job is done, my life is very much about helping men and women to break free from addiction. And that includes helping people who are helping people break free. And so I am so excited that across the globe, across the nation and across the Americas, individuals and communities and criminal justice systems and treatment communities are coming together around the drug court model. And I want to do everything I can in the half hour or so that I have to help you understand how best to set up your treatment services, how best to work with your treatment providers, those who provide addiction treatment, and how to help them work better with the court, and how to help the court work better with the drug treatment providers. So we set up a system that helps people get better. I know you've heard about the 10 key components. And I know you know that there is a lot about drug court. There are lots of pieces and important parts of drug court. But there is no part that is more important than treatment. That even if everything else works well, even if you've got great judges, great incentives and sanctions, great defense attorneys, prosecutors who understand drug court and support it, even if you have great supervision and case management, even if all of those things are in place, if you don't have effective treatment that helps to move people from a life of addiction to a life of full recovery, then your drug treatment court will not work. It is about effective treatment. I don't know if you've had a chance yet to hear and talk about target population. I know you heard about that some in the key components. But drug court is for a very specific kind of individual. That's an individual whose drug use is more than just occasional, whose drug use is at either moderate or severe levels. People who need help to stop. People who probably are not going to be able to stop on their own. That's who drug treatment court is for. And if we've identified the right people in drug treatment court, then we ought to be providing them the kind of treatment that works. And so we'll talk about that today. And I'm going to talk about what evidence says you should be thinking about as you design your treatment services, as you recruit treatment providers, as you design treatment services, as you try and figure out what kind of treatment are we going to provide in our drug courts. I want to give you some information that will help you, sort of a checklist that will help you identify the kinds of things you want to have in place or you want to work toward as you get established. Now, we'll also try and be very realistic. We know that you won't have everything at the beginning. There may be some services or some components that you don't have. That's okay. We'll also talk about how to make the most of what you have, or how to make do with what you have and still do an effective job as much as you can. I'm just curious, and I'll pause and wait for the translation so I can see a show of hands. I'm interested if there are other treatment providers or case managers, people who deliver treatment or case management services, social workers, psychologists. If there are any in the room, let me see your hands, please. Just hold them up for me. Okay. Very good. All right. Okay, good. I wanted to see who my colleagues are. And I want you to pay special attention, because the people with you at your tables will have questions for you about some of this after I leave, because I won't be able to tell them everything. They'll have questions for you about effective treatment services after I leave, so I encourage you to be prepared to answer those questions. All right. Are you ready? I didn't hear an answer. Do it in Spanish. Are you ready? Yeah, all right, thank you. Let's get going. Effective drug treatment, methods, modalities, and more. When we think about effective treatment, we really are thinking about really two big things: the process of treatment and the practice of treatment. The way we deliver treatment, the way we deliver services, and then the actual services that we deliver. And as you are developing your treatment component, you want to focus on both pieces. What kind of systems, what kind of processes, what kind of policies, what kind of agreements do we want to have in place so we can effectively deliver addiction treatment. But even if you have the right process, the right system in place, you also want to be delivering something that works, delivering something that, that is valuable, that is effective. You know, I'm reading a book right now called Integrity. It's a book called Integrity. It's a great book about how business leaders can how business leaders can be more successful by being people of integrity. And it tells a story about a dog food company. All right, the judge had a cartoon with a dog in bed, and so it made me think about this story. It was about a true story about a dog food company, and the company had been around for a long, was a fairly new company, and their sales weren't very good. People weren't buying the dog food, and so the company, the president of the company said, listen, we need to do a better job at marketing. We need to do a better job at selling our product and being sure the dog owners know that our dog food is out here. And so they put more money into advertising and spent a lot more time trying to get the word out. Still, another quarter had passed and nothing changed. Their sales were still flat. So the CEO decided, listen, we need to get rid of all of we need to get rid of this advertising company and hire a brand new company who can give us a brand new advertising campaign so we can sell our dog food. He did all of that. They had a really good system in place. They sold it in a great way. But guess what happened? No sales. Sales still flat. And so they went through this at least 2 more times, and eventually they had a big meeting where the president was talking with all of the managers about what is going wrong, what are we not doing in the right way, why don't people know about our product, why don't people buy our product. And finally, a little guy sitting way at the back of the room raised his hand and said, sir, may I say something? And the president was sort of irritated because he was trying to talk to the people who could help him solve his problem. But he said, yes, what do you have to say? And he said, sir,
the dogs don't like the food. So it doesn't matter how you sell it, doesn't matter how you package it. If the dogs don't like the food, if you're not delivering treatment that works, then none of it works. So both things are important, treatment process as well as the product itself. Okay, here's the big picture. Here's what I want you to think about, the big picture. That as you think about and as you lay out how people will get into your drug court, get into your drug treatment court, there's lots of things you want to do. You may have already talked to some about screening, and you want to be sure people are eligible based on legal criteria. Let's assume that's happened. They're eligible based on legal criteria. Once that's happened, you want to see, okay, well, who needs our services? Just because a person is eligible based on the legal stuff, who actually needs treatment in order to stop? Because if they don't, they really shouldn't be in your program. Even if they meet the legal requirements, if they don't actually need help, need treatment to stop using drugs and enter a life of recovery, then they really don't belong in your drug treatment court. And let me tell you something. Across the United States, there are courts right now who are trying to correct mistakes they made when they started their courts. My court was one of them. I run the largest drug court in the area. And we started this is our 20th anniversary. We started in 1993. And in 1993, if you were a drug user, we put you in. It didn't matter whether you were a social user, or an abuser, or whether you were an addict. We took you in. And as we matured as a program and as the research got better, we recognized that we ought to be focusing our attention on those who are in the high end of need, those who are drug addicted or severe abusers. And so we had to sort of correct it and change our criteria and change how we assess so that we can identify men and women who are actually living with addiction. And so it starts with an assessment. That one way or the other, you need a treatment person. Some of the treatment folks that are in this room or back in your own countries and your own jurisdictions and neighborhoods who are treatment experts who can conduct a clinical assessment, who understands addiction, someone who understands treatment and what services are available, and someone who understands what recovery is. So it starts with an assessment. And after the assessment, and only after the assessment, should a decision be made about actually placing a person in your drug treatment court. We know you're going to do a screening up front because an assessment takes a lot of time. And so you can't assess everybody who might need your program. So you're usually going to begin with the screening to identify people who look like they have a drug problem. And that screening can be done by a probation officer, a defense attorney. It can be done by all kinds of people, the screening. But then once the screening says, well, we see this person's has had positive drug tests, they're drug users. We see that they talk about having some problems with drinking and drugging. And then those people you might identify to be assessed, to get a full assessment to determine if they actually need your services. This is sometimes the hardest thing to pull off because sometimes it's hard to get someone assessed until they're actually in the program. But as you are thinking about it, as you're trying to design it, if you can find a way to have the treatment assessment precede a placement decision, if you can find a way to have the treatment decision come before the placement decision, that's a good decision because that's really how it's supposed to work. So it begins with assessment, then a decision about placement in drug treatment court, and then we begin treatment and supervision. So that's the big picture. That's the big picture. Well, once we get to the end here, once we get to this piece where we're talking about treatment, what should that look like? What should that look like? That's where I want to go next. First of all, across the United States and Canada and the rest of the Americas, I suppose, and the rest of the globe, that those of us in the helping profession, those of us who are psychologists and social workers and drug treatment counselors, we are hearing the words evidence-based treatment. Have you heard anything about evidence-based practices or evidence-based treatment yet this week? Well, you certainly will, because that's what it's about now. It's about science. There's a lot of research out there about the kind of treatment that works with offenders, about the kind of treatment that works with in drug court. And so it's about identifying, you're trying to identify treatment services that are effective, that have been tested, that have been researched, that have some outcomes. Whatever you're trying to get, whatever your big outcomes are, if you want to protect public safety, if you want to protect community safety, if you want to reunite families, if you want to create, if you want to help to create citizens who can work and take care of their families and take care of themselves, if those are the outcomes you're looking for, you want to be sure you're delivering treatment services which are likely to help you get that. So it's about what science says, what outcomes say. The good news is many of you are starting out. You know, drug courts have been around for 25 years now. And so we've had a lot of time to make a lot. We've made all the mistakes. So you should learn from the mistakes in the U.S. And other places where drug courts have been around a long time. And one of the mistakes we made is we didn't pay enough attention to the quality of the treatment services that we were delivering. Some of us were delivering the same treatment for everybody, the same basic stuff. And that's not what evidence says works. So it's about evidence-based practices. So in the old days, and I've been in the treatment field for more than 20 years. I've done this for as long as I've done anything as an adult. And when I first started out in the treatment world, I could rely on my instincts. I could rely on sort of my gut, kind of what felt like was the right thing to do. And that was okay. You know, that was all right. You know, some people got better. But I could never be sure what I was doing that was working. And when it didn't work, I could never be sure I wonder if I should have been doing something else. And so the old days when we could just rely on our instincts are basically over. Now it's about evidence, it's about outcomes, it's about what actually works. Now, let's face it, every helper in this room, every counselor, every psychologist, every social worker, we know that sometimes we do rely on sort of how things feel to us, and that's okay. We know that sometimes we're not exactly sure what approach is best. We're just going on our gut and our instinct, and that's all right. But that can't be what your treatment's based on. The treatment has to be, or needs to be, based on evidence and things that have been proven to be effective, hopefully with a population that looks like yours. That may be the big challenge. Being sure that the treatment approaches that you're being asked to try and deliver have been tested and researched on a population, on a group of people that look like and are similar to the people you'll be servicing. That's an important distinction. We had that issue in the United States, where we have a very diverse culture, and some of the treatment interventions were developed and tested on populations that don't look like and are not similar to the populations that I serve in my drug court. And so we searched to look to see not just if there was research, but who was the research on? And was the research found to be effective on populations that have similar ethnic, cultural, racial, and social, economic, and other factors as my population? Otherwise, it might not be evidence-based. It might not be effective. All right, now check out this cartoon here. Look at that kid's report card. If you all got any kids, I hope your kid doesn't come home with a report card that looks like that. I don't know if y'all do Fs, you know, A, B, C, D, F, but F is the worst grade you can get. All right, that means you learn nothing. So imagine this kid here with all Fs, and he's asking his parents, is now a good time for us to discuss upping my allowance? Well, the answer to that is no. And in the same way, like once your program is established and you start trying to get funding, I understand that several of you are piloting, you're testing some drug treatment courts already, and you're hoping the tests go well, because if the tests go well, then you can maybe get more funding and become larger. In order to do that, you got to get good grades. You have to be helping people to get better, helping people to get clean and stay that way, and effective treatment is a big part of that. All right, now what I want to do with the rest of my time, I know that yesterday Caroline Cooper talked about the 10 key components. And there are 2 of those key components that deal specifically with treatment services. Key component number 1 and key component number 4. And so I want to take just a few moments and talk about those 2 components, number 1 and number 4, and talk about how you make that real. They're just words on a screen. They're just words on a slide. But how do you actually do what that component says? And it starts at the planning process. It starts when you're still planning your program. So that's why I'm glad you're here today, and I'm glad I'm here, because I wish when my program started in 1993, we had been in a room like this and with someone talking with us about this kind of stuff, because we didn't have that. We sort of did what we thought made sense, and years later had to make a lot of changes to develop a more effective program. So the first key component that involves treatment is the first key component, the one that says drug courts integrate alcohol and other treatment services with justice system programming, justice system processing. At its essence, at its foundations, that's what drug courts do. They integrate alcohol and other drug treatment with justice system case processing. 2 different worlds. The drug treatment world and the criminal justice world are really 2 different worlds that have different ways of seeing the world, different ways of seeing the person, different ways of approaching the problems that our communities face. Drug courts say, you know what? This one's not better than this one, and this one's not better than this one. The best course is to see if we can integrate the 2. Treatment services, the treatment service system, and the criminal justice system integrated. It's a great sounding concept. It sounds great. Integration is a good word. You want to integrate. That means you get the best of both worlds. But it's easier to say it than it is to do it. And I want to talk about what integration looks like, and I'll also warn you about some of the challenges you're going to face as you try and integrate those problems, those 2 issues. All right, so here are the ingredients. Let's go ahead and bake a cake. Let's bake a drug court treatment, drug court criminal justice integration cake. All right, here are the ingredients you need to bake that cake. All right, number 1, you need to have treatment representatives who attend and are actively involved in pre-court staffings. Now, I don't know if you've talked about it yet, or if you've read up on it, or if you know about it, but the way drug court works is before a drug court hearing, before the session, the team gets together and discusses the case. So usually, the judge is there, the defense attorney is there, the prosecutor is there, supervision is there, and treatment's there. And they discuss all the cases on that day's calendar. Sometimes it's a very quick discussion, just saying, he's doing great, no issues. Sometimes there's more discussion. Sometimes there's a problem we're trying to solve. Sometimes the person has a violation or an infraction, and we have to discuss what the sanction should be. That's an important discussion. That helps to drive what drug court does. It helps to make sure that we're thinking carefully about what's best for the participant. And it's important the treatment be a part of that discussion, that they are at the table. If there's more than one counselor or more than one provider, there needs to be a representative, at least one of them needs to be at the table, needs to be a part of that discussion. That's a part of how you integrate treatment with case processing. It's also important that the treatment representative, at least a representative of treatment, be at the court hearing. Now, they may have given a written report already, but they also may need to be in the room in order to represent something to the court. It's important that they be a part of the process, and that means for any of the treatment folks in the room, if you are like me, when I first started working with drug courts, I didn't really understand the court process fully. I didn't know what the abbreviations meant. I wasn't exactly sure about even what courtroom decorum was, how I was supposed to act, because I was happy that I never had to be in a courtroom. But I had to learn that stuff. In order to be in that world, I had to figure out what these charges were, what the abbreviations meant, how the court worked, and what was important to them. And they had to learn about me too. They had to learn about treatment as well. It's both sides learning about each other. And if you have law enforcement, if you have law enforcement, police, or sheriffs who are going to be on your team, who might help do home visits, or who might, if you live in a small community, who might sort of be able to keep an eye on your participants to be sure they're not going in bars or anything, and to encourage them to do the right thing. If you're going to have law enforcement on your team, or supervision officers, probation officers, or pretrial officers, you also want them to know, want them to support abstinence. You want them to support the participant not having alcohol or drugs in their home, not hanging out in bars, not hanging out on the corner doing the wrong thing. They can be a part of that. It's a part of what they do. You know, I've been a drug treatment person my whole adult life, but I've never done a home visit. I've never been in someone's home. That's never been a part of my job. But it's, at least in the United States, probation officers often do home visits, and that can allow them to see how things look there and to encourage the participant to stay clean and sober, to keep alcohol out of their home, and to stay away from people who are actively using. And that's really important for successful treatment. Let's keep going. And in a similar way, if you're a drug counselor or you're the treating professional, you also want to know what are the supervision requirements. If they have a curfew, you want to encourage them to be responsible and keep that curfew. If they need to make restitution, if they have community service that the court expects them to do, if there's someone they are ordered to stay away from, you want to, as a treatment person, you want to make that a part of the treatment plan, because we're integrating the two. Now, treatment and court processing are integrated, so on the treatment side, we're trying to support supervision goals, and on the court services side, they're trying to support the treatment goals. Are there judges in the room? Judges? Judges? Okay, many judges, all right. You have a very important role in drug court, as I'm certain you have figured out. In fact, at every graduation, every month we graduate people from our drug court, and we have a big ceremony every single month. I wish you could, we just had ours last week or week before last. I wish you could have been here for it. But of all the things the participants talk about, some of them will say, oh yeah, my counselor really helped me, or, you know, those sanctions really helped me get in line. But all of them say, but I could not have done it without the judge. Thank you for believing in me. Even when you sanctioned me, I didn't like it then, but now I know that really helped me. It is remarkable how many people, even some who were really angry and resistant and tough at the beginning, by the end, if they make it through, by the end, they're very grateful, and especially to the judge. So judges can support treatment goals as well by letting participants know that even though you may not get into the details of exactly what they're saying and doing in treatment, They need to know you expect them to be there, to participate in treatment, and to give it their best. They need to hear that from you. That helps make my job easier. It helps make my job easier if my client knows that the judge is paying attention and the judge is expecting them to do the right thing. And this other piece is also really important, number 6 there. And that is that on a drug court team, there are people from different professions. And it's important we all understand and appreciate the different philosophies we have within our different professions. That's really important. We understand that judges and probation officers and police officers might see things a little differently and have a different philosophy than the drug treatment counselor has. The prosecutor has a different priority than the defense attorney. And in drug court, we remain true to our own philosophy. We remain true to our own perspective and to our own ethics. However, we appreciate the other side and see if there's a way we can find a happy medium, find a way we can meet in the middle for the best outcome. All right, there are 4 things, as I wrap up this section, 4 things that are important for integration to work. First of all, it's about communication. That you should now start thinking about in what ways are we going, or how are we going to ensure, that everyone on the team is communicating? Are we going to use emails to update on the progress of participants? Are we, is everyone going to be able to be at the staffing? How are we going to communicate? And you want to really talk that through. Don't just leave that to chance. Talk through how you'll communicate in ways that work. In order to do that, you have to deal with confidentiality. At least in the United States, drug treatment is protected. And so without a signed release, I can't, as a treatment provider, I can't describe a person's treatment to just anyone. So whatever the privacy and confidentiality laws are in your area, whatever they are in your country, your jurisdiction, know what those rules are and figure out how you will be able to protect and maintain confidentiality and still be running a drug court where treatment issues are discussed. It's also about coordinating, being sure that if supervision or probation is doing drug testing and treatment's doing drug testing as well, that we're not duplicating our effort. We're finding ways to coordinate our efforts with drug testing, with appointments and other things. And most importantly is cross-training like we're doing right now. Having everyone in the room together, getting trained on the same stuff so that I know a little bit more about the court piece and the supervision piece, and this other person knows a little bit more about the treatment piece and the case management piece. It's about communication, confidentiality, coordination, and cross-training. We won't have time to talk about it now, but I hope as I have gone through this piece about integration, I hope you've already begun to think about some of the obstacles and some of the problems you might have in integrating treatment and court services. If we have time at the end, I'd like you to ask some of those questions or talk about some of the problems or obstacles you think you might have so we can discuss solutions. The 4th component is number 4. The next component to deal with treatment is number 4. What is that? Is number 4, is that cuatro? Uno, dos, tres. Cuatro. All right. That's the one word I know. All right. That's number 4. All right. So drug courts provide access to a continuum, to a variety of alcohol, drug, and other drug treatment services. So drug courts don't just provide one thing. We provide a continuum, a variety of drug treatment services. Now, in the United States, there's an organization called the American Society of Addiction Medicine. And the American Society of Addiction Medicine is a group of physicians, doctors, who practice addiction medicine. And they have formed an organization that develops standards and protocols and instructions for the drug treatment field. And within their instructions, they've identified the different kinds of treatment, the different levels of care that should be available. And I don't want to go into all these details, but basically we're talking about like outpatient treatment, intensive outpatient treatment, and some kind of residential. So most of you probably know that outpatient and intensive outpatient means you still live at home, but you come to a place and you get treatment several times a week. In outpatient, they come a little less often. In intensive outpatient, they come more often. And then residential is when they actually go and live in a treatment center for a period of time. You know that. That's common. I'm assuming that's the case across the globe. And drug courts try and provide all of that to anybody who needs it. That's a big challenge sometimes. Sometimes you don't have all those levels of care. If you're treating alcoholics who are physically dependent, or people who use heroin or other opiates who are physically hooked on it, who've been using it a long time, they may need medical detox. They may have to be hospitalized in order to stop using safely. And all of these are necessary drug court services. And so you want to start by figuring out, well, what treatment is available to us? What treatment do we have? And is there something missing? And if you don't have outpatient and intensive outpatient and residential and detox, it doesn't mean you can't operate. It doesn't mean you can't open, but it means that it might affect who you can serve. All the levels of care are important if you can get it. Now, sometimes you're going to fall short. Oh, let's go back and do that one. All right, let's go back and do that one. All right, look at that picture very closely. It says, never start a project unless all the resources are available. All right, so you want to be sure as you get started, do we have what we need to finish this job? So you want to try and see what's out there and see if you have everything you need. But if there's something you're lacking, if there's a service you don't have, what might you do? Let's look at some examples of what to do when you fall short. If you're like most places in the United States, almost all of us have some outpatient treatment. We have some clinics people can go to. But we might not have like intensive outpatient. They may not be able to go there like for 9 hours a week. And we might not have residential treatment where they go and live there. And that's what you kind of need in drug court. Some addicts are going to need that. But if you don't have it, there may be some ways you can combine some things in order to still give them the service they need. One way is give them outpatient treatment or intensive outpatient treatment, and perhaps combine it with them being in a halfway house or a sober living facility or a transitional house, if you have any of those things. In the United States, we have what we call Oxford houses, which are really, it's not treatment, but it's a sober place, a clean and sober place for a person to live while they get services. And let me just pause here if I could. I'm not certain what the calendar, where we are on the agenda now. Very good. Okay, got it. Okay. All right. So sometimes if you have higher supervision options, if you have available in your jurisdictions, like electronic monitoring or where people have like ankle bracelets to help monitor their whereabouts, sometimes having a higher supervision option like that while they're also getting treatment, will help to keep an eye on them. And in nearly everywhere on the globe, there are Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and other support groups. So if you don't have all the professional treatment you need, it's really important to make full use of the support groups that are available. And nowadays, there are support groups that are available online, on the internet, support groups available by telephone, as well as face-to-face. So now in drug court, you do need professional treatment. Has to be some professional counselor providing treatment. But in addition to that, also making use of support groups, AA, NA, and etc. are important. Similar concept here, engage the volunteer community. Sometimes churches and other organizations support recovery. They understand addiction. They're not trying to convert people, but they're trying to help bring relief to addicts and others. And sometimes you can engage and join with the community and churches who can help provide services for people who need help. Sometimes, you know, what you need is not available, so you try and build your expertise internally. You try and train your own staff to deliver some of these services as a way of being able to serve more. And then finally, sometimes you have to limit your program to those who you can actually safely treat. If people need medical detox to get clean and sober and you don't have that, you probably can't treat them in your program. So part of what you'll do is look at what your target population look like, what their needs are, and can you meet those needs safely. If you can't, then there's someone who you probably couldn't let in. But you know, you never want to do that unless you have to, and so you do the best you can with the resources you have, and then move forward from there. Now, here's something I want to leave. Don't miss this, because this is something that's basically brand new research findings, brand new in the U.S. We're just now recognizing this. Now, and this says that if you have an individual who has been assessed to need residential treatment in order to stay clean and sober, but they can't get that because it's not available, then if you're going to sanction them for drug use, you shouldn't be using the stringent sanctions. You shouldn't be using jail sanctions. Because keep in mind, you've already said, the treatment person's already said they need residential, but we don't have it. And so you're not going to ignore their drug use. You can sanction them. You can require them to go to more meetings. You can give them community service maybe. You can do other sanctions and treatment responses to their infractions, but you're not going to do the most stringent sanctions like jail sanctions because they really you aren't able to give them what they need in order to stay clean and sober. So finally, qualified practitioners. You need people who are qualified to deliver treatment, whatever that means in your area. In some cities, in some states, in some countries, people have to have a license or a certification. In other places, they need very specific training. However it is in your area, be sure the practitioners, the counselors, the helpers are qualified. You need to have enough treatment to succeed. You need to have an assessment which is accurately identifying drug users. You want to have treatment planning that makes sense, that is relevant. You want culturally appropriate evidence-based treatments. Treatments, interventions that have been tested on populations that look like yours. You want treatment practitioners, treatment counselors who are trained and coached to use treatment manuals. And when I say treatment manual, what I mean is that for the treatment interventions that are out there that have been researched, the researchers and the clinicians have outlined how that intervention is to be delivered in a resource, in a notebook or a manual. And the counselor then will use that manual as a guide. They won't read it word for word because, you know, they're an individual, but they'll use that manual to say the kinds of things I should be doing in each session. And this is a big change for the treatment field. Treatment manual. So one of the things you want to ask your treatment providers is, are there any treatment manuals that you use to help guide what you do in treatment? That's an important part of a treatment. And of course, you want to have strong linkages with the community-based recovery network with AA, NA, and etc. All right, quality assurance and quality control. You want to know what you're doing and know if it's working. You want to evaluate your impact. Start that from the beginning. Figure out now how you're going to assess how well you're doing as a program. Don't do like most of us did and wait till years later to decide, oh, I wonder if this is working. So figure out now, how are we going to quality control, how are we going to evaluate what we do, know what's happening, and know if it's working. Finally, those are the 5 big treatment categories that need to be covered. Cognitive behavioral treatment. I wish I could talk more about it, but Google it. Cognitive behavioral treatment. Treatments that deal with the way people think and how their thoughts and their feelings affect their behavior, and how changing the way they think can change the way they feel and change the way they behave. Cognitive behavioral treatments are an evidence-based treatment intervention in drug courts. Your providers should be delivering those kind of services. Motivation enhancement services like motivational interviewing. Treatment interventions that help people who aren't ready to change get ready. Relapse prevention. Listen, folks, the hardest part isn't stopping. The hardest part isn't stopping drinking and drugging. The hardest part is staying stopped. And so the drug court treatment needs to offer really specific, realistic, effective relapse prevention programming. Also, the use of medications, medication-assisted treatment. If you'll be treating people who are dependent on opiates, and if methadone or those kinds of treatments are available in your community, that's an evidence-based approach. And it's something that should be allowed in drug court if it's permitted in your community. And then finally, don't expect people to only have one problem. Many people living with drug addiction are also living with other mental health problems. And so we want to be prepared to address both problems within our drug court. So there's lots of good information out there. Some is good, some is better. Lots of stuff about treatment. Lots of stuff about drug courts. We need a lot more about drug court stuff, but there's information out there to look at. Let me please write, I think this is in your notes. You'll see this website. And I don't know that it's in Spanish, so that's not good. But hopefully, if it can be translated for you, it's in English, yeah. But this is a resource in the United States that identifies hundreds of evidence-based treatment interventions. And what I like about it is it also will show you who the treatment was tested on, whether it was tested in which countries, in which ethnicities, which racial groups, which cultures. So that's a website. I think the website itself is only in English, so that won't help you if you don't have someone who can translate it for you. But it includes several treatment manuals that are in Spanish. And so hopefully you can reference that. Finally, folks, it's all about recovery. The drug treatment court is about trying to move people from addiction to recovery. Not just getting people to stop using until they get finished with court. Not just trying to get them to suffer and avoid using and be miserable. It's about helping to bring people to a whole new way of living, a whole new way of life, a whole new way of finding joy and satisfaction and meaning, clean and sober. And that's what drug courts can do. That is the promise of drug court treatment. It can transform lives. I've seen it happen over and over again. People can go from addiction to recovery. And for many people, that journey begins at drug court. So thank you so much for beginning that journey, and thank you for your time and attention. That's all I got.
Íbamos a pasar al café, pero si hay 2 o 3 preguntas, yo creo que es el momento, porque luego nos vamos a contar con este ponente.
Okay. Thank you.
Un segundo que se ponga el audífono y así.
Bueno, sí.
Thanks. It's not. Okay.
Cuando quiera. Identifíquese, sí, para que sepa con quién habla y así mejor.
Okay. Buenos días, mi nombre es Mario González Zavala y vengo de la Comisión Nacional contra las Adicciones de México. Felicidades por la ponencia. Nos queda muy claro el papel que tiene la integración de servicios, tanto de adicciones como salud mental y todo lo demás que está involucrado en las personas con este tipo de problemas. Revisé la página del SAMHSA, donde vienen los manuales y los programas basados en evidencia científica.
Just lost it.
Bueno, ¿se escucha ya? Bueno, voy a cantar. ¿Ya? Bueno, ¿sí, mejor? ¿Ya? Okay. Felicidades por la ponencia. Queda muy clara el papel que tiene la integración de los servicios, incluyendo sobre todo la cuestión de salud mental, ya que la gran mayoría de los pacientes con adicciones de estas características van a tener el fenómeno del diagnóstico dual y todo este componente conductual que tienen. En la página del SAMHSA, de los programas basados en evidencia científica, hay uno que nos llamó mucho la atención a los que venimos de México, que es este de Moral Recognition Therapy, que está directamente ligado o basado en la terapia cognitivo-conductual, pero específico para la disminución del crimen. Los programas de tratamiento para adicciones en México no contemplan terapia cognitivo-conductual para reducir el crimen, que básicamente es uno de los componentes de las cortes de drogas. Entonces, aparte de este modelo de terapia, de psicoterapia, ¿hay algún otro que recomienden para poder capacitar a nuestro personal y poderlo implementar?
It's a very good question and good point. I think that I want to return, though, to the emphasis on cognitive behavioral treatments, and then I'll suggest some other ones as well. That as you are establishing your treatment court, if you have an opportunity to request technical assistance, to request special training for your treatment providers, I would highly recommend that you request technical assistance from the National Association or special training in these cognitive behavioral approaches. They're so effective, so well researched, that it's hard to escape them. So I recommend you try and help providers to get up to speed on that. But there are other approaches. And I mentioned relapse prevention. It's almost impossible that your providers aren't delivering some kind of relapse prevention therapy. Some are different than others, but nearly all of them help individuals to come to grips with what's driving their addiction, what triggers it, what triggers a craving, and then helps them to strategize how they stay clean and sober. So relapse prevention is an important component here. What you are really looking for, and this is the only way I know how to say it, what you're really looking for is a program, a treatment intervention that does like three things. Needs something, some way the program, the treatment piece, is helping to increase motivation, motivational interviewing and other type skills. But a lot of people will come into your drug court, even if they have a problem, not really ready to stop. So some way to increase motivation. That's one piece. They also need to develop better insight, a piece of the treatment program that helps them to better understand why they're using, what their grief is about, what they're trying to accomplish and solve by their drinking and drugging, how they get clean, how they got addicted, something that builds insight. So motivation, insight, and the last piece is really important, and that is skill building. The treatment itself needs to not just be about talking. They ought to be practicing new things in the treatment center, practicing new ways to communicate, practicing new ways to relax themselves, practicing new ways to have fun, practicing new ways to say no to drinking and drugging. So it's about skill building. And at least in the United States, when I look at programs and try and help them develop stronger treatment pieces, that's often a piece that's missing. There's a lot of talking, a lot of teaching, a lot of process groups, but not enough practicing in the treatment session. So try and get some ways to get additional cognitive behavioral training. Treatment providers who are in the room, if you're going to the drug court conference, that starts tomorrow, please look for some of the classes on cognitive behavioral treatment. There may be a class on MRT, the moral recognition therapy, MRT. Can be a class on any number of topics, but there's several sessions on cognitive behavioral treatments. But in addition to that, relapse prevention therapy, motivational interviewing.
Una pregunta más había por aquí, bueno, hay varias. Si son muy rápidas las preguntas, muy concretas, nos da tiempo a cubrir las dos. Javier.
Sí. Muy buenos días.
Okay.
Mi nombre es Enrique Pérez, soy juez penal de Panamá. Lo felicito por su conferencia, señor Terence. Nos ha traído tantos puntos interesantes pero quiero preguntar algo muy breve. ¿Cuál ha sido su experiencia en la sinergia de integrar todos estos elementos que están aquí en esta diapositiva en los practitioners, trained, coached, strong linkage with the community-based quality assurance control? ¿Cuál ha sido su experiencia buena? ¿Cómo se ha logrado esto acá?
Okay. Well, again, it's an excellent question. There's a couple of things that I think are important. First of all, it's really important to take it slow, not to expect too much too quickly. It's important to identify when you're planning your court, like who are the people who should be in the room? Like when I think about all that our participants are going to need, who are the people that should be in the room when we're planning our program? We know there's going to be the judge and the prosecutor and the defense attorney. We know there needs to be treatment. There might also need to be someone from the faith community, from the religious community. There may need to be someone, if you have organizations that provide job training, they may need to be in the room. If you have physicians who maybe can provide some free physicals to people, they may need to be in the room. If there are organizations that help with housing, they may need to be in the room. So you want to really think about, we call it like community mapping. We look at your community and say, well, what are the kinds of services are our folks going to need in order to be healthy? And then create opportunities for them to come together, just to talk and to brainstorm and to get to know each other, to share different ideas, even before you get down to the business of planning your program. It's about people getting to know each other, getting to understand what each other's jobs are like, what their limitations are. And that's been my experience, that if we take our time and sort of get to know the people and their professions, if we learn to like each other, even before we get down to business, then when it's time to say, okay, how are we going to structure our program, the work becomes much easier. So I have found that really, once we get right to the heart of the matter, that we're all really working for the same thing. That, you know, treatment has one approach, and criminal justice has one approach, and the church has one approach, and the school has one approach, but we're all just trying to create people who are well, who are healthy, who are whole and productive. That's all we're trying to do. And so I say, especially when things get tense and people start disagreeing, just remind yourself what the common goal is. So integration works, but it takes time, it takes patience, and it takes a leader. You know, somebody who is good at pulling people together. That may be some of you in this room. Someone's got to be the person who's not going to give up, who's not going to let anyone quit, who's going to keep the team together, a strong leader.
Vamos a hacer las dos preguntas juntas y ya cerramos la ronda. Si Javier y luego había otra pregunta, las dos juntas y luego responden. Two questions together.
Hello, I'm Javier Cordova from State Department. We're pretty much would like to, you know, you did a fabulous presentation.
Thank you.
I have a question because this is something that reaches a whole number of countries once you're in the communities, once you get into the treatment. Could you please touch a little bit of who pays for all these services? Once this, there is an outpatient or inpatients, you have number of people in the community here in the United States. If you can touch who pays for all this service, I would appreciate that.
Certainly. In the United States, there are several different sources of funding. In many drug courts require the participants to pay a small amount for their services. My program does not, because most of our participants aren't able to pay anything. We have a population which is largely poor and largely African American and Latina, Hispanic, and most aren't able to pay. But many drug courts require a drug court fee of some kind. But that won't pay for all the treatment, even if they can do that. So there are also, in the U.S., there have been a number of grants. The federal government funds, federal and state governments, and sometimes local governments, fund treatment for those who are most in need. It's often not enough, but it can get some. There are also many programs that have benefited from generous rich people, from generous wealthy people. There are foundations in the United States who are looking for good they can do with their money. And so many programs have been helped through foundations and generous gifts from wealthy Americans. Sometimes businesses will invest. Large businesses will invest and contribute to monies that can help pay for treatment. And other times, there are fees that are tied to the criminal justice system. There might be restitution or fees that a program has to, that a person has to pay as a part of the court system. And sometimes portions of those fees will go to drug court and can go toward treatment. In the United States, there are often drug seizures where property is seized from drug distributors, sometimes very valuable property. There are some communities where that property is sold and the proceeds go to support drug court. Those are all options. There are areas all across this country where treatment is not cheap and it's harder to get. And even those communities have found ways to provide treatment services. They sometimes have to start small. They may not be able to treat a whole lot of people at first, but through all those sources, through self-pay, through government grants, through private foundations, through wealthy individuals, through businesses, through criminal justice fees, from seizures of property, from drug dealers. All of those are ways that people have been able to fund treatment. And sometimes it's voluntary. Sometimes there are practitioners who volunteer services because they care so much about the issue.
Parece que no tenemos ninguna pregunta más, finalmente. Gracias. Pasamos. Muchas gracias. Otro aplauso, por favor, para el ponente.
Thank you.
Vamos a pasar al café, 15 minutos, y volvemos a la sala para la siguiente, que es la de los papeles, los roles.